Hello, and welcome back to the My First Marathon podcast, where we interview runners in all stages of their running career about their first marathon experiences to prove that anyone can run a marathon. My name is Taylor, and today we talk to a runner who is a fan of the show and found us all the way from Australia. What I love about this runner is her story really shows you that anyone can do hard things. We break down how she changed her relationship with running over time, starting from really not liking her long runs at all to eventually closer to race day, really missing those longer runs and time with herself. We also talk about the electricity of the running community and how on race day it's so fun to look around at everyone and think, we did this. Let's go ahead and jump right into her story. So without further ado, please welcome Belle. Belle, thank you so much for coming on the podcast this weekend. How's your weekend going so far?
Yeah, it's been good. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be on here.
Yeah, I'm so excited. For everybody that doesn't know, it's morning for you, obviously.
It
We're
is.
across the world from each other. And Belle reached out to be on the podcast just because you were training for your first marathon. Glad that we found our way into your to your headphones while you were training. And yeah, we kind of got connected from there. So we're gonna break down your first marathon experience, training, and all that. And I'm excited to kind of dive into it all.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I really enjoyed listening to your podcast when I was running and found it so helpful on all my long runs. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it's exciting to be on here.
That's very cool. Very cool. All right, sweet. Well, let's just start from the beginning. How did you get introduced to the running world, to movement in general? How did we get to this point?
So I've never been one to really enjoy exercise until recently.
Yeah.
Always kind of hated it at school, but I decided I wanted to get into law enforcement for a career. So I needed to have a bit of, I guess, training to get me through what I had to do there. And then once I was in, I wanted to maintain a level of fitness between shift work and what I had to do day to day at work. So we have a community run all through Australia. There's a thing called Park Run, which is a 5K free timed run at all local parks throughout Australia. And internationally as well. I don't know if there's any in America, but it's a very big Saturday morning thing here. It's the same time in every state, and we can get up to 600 people at these fun runs each
Wow.
morning. Yeah. My local one normally has between 200 and 300 people. And yeah, it's a really beautiful community atmosphere that is really pace inclusive. So they have pace walkers, park run walkers, to people that do it in 15 minutes. And
I love
yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah,
And is it all volunteer? Is
it's
everybody
all
that leads it all
volunteer.
volunteer? Oh, that's
Yeah,
so
it's
cool.
all volunteer based. And yeah, so I've been doing that as that's my been my running for the last probably 12 years or so. I'll occasionally go to those, but even then, it's only whenever I get a chance to. So once every couple of months type of thing. And yeah, so and always wanted that sub 30 5K, which was always a really big goal, but never, I guess, understood how to train properly to try and get
Sure.
that. I'm just trying to do the same 5K every without any consistent training, and disappointed when I do it, and I'm still not getting any closer to that
Sure.
sub 30. But I guess over COVID, my fitness really started to decline again. I have a young daughter, and then it was towards the end of last year or around August last year. Through work, they sent us to a program. It was a 4 hour program called Trek to Health, which is a
Mm,
hiking group for frontline workers. And they do a talk to us about resilience and things along those lines, and then take us out hiking. Uh, and that was when I realized how unfit I had become. I really
sure.
struggled just on these basic hill repeats that they were getting us to do. And I was speaking to the CEO who was on the hike, and he convinced me to to sign up, and I thought, yeah, I really needed it. I didn't realize I was quite at that level of fitness.
Sure.
Uh, so the program wasn't going to start for another 6 weeks or so. So I just started walking each day between 5 and 15 kilometers because I knew I needed to get my um, fitness level up. So this Trek to Health program that they do, it goes for a year, but you sign up to a module at a time, which is a 6 week training block where you train for a
Mm,
challenge, and each 6 weeks the challenge gets slightly more difficult. So the first one was
mm.
a 25K hike, which seemed really quite overwhelming
Yeah, that's a
initially.
lot.
It is a lot. So, and then as I as I was getting towards that first kind of block of training, I um, listened to a podcast where they interviewed this Australian woman. Her name's Kath Wallace, and she's this back of the pack ultra marathoner who does these incredible marathons, ultra marathons all over the world through Mongolia and out Central Australia that go for, over 100-kilometer
Yeah.
marathons. And she just made it sound so achievable and so exciting. And that how she spoke about picking ones with really large cutoff times, so it is achievable. And that was
Yeah.
when I first thought, well, maybe I can do something like that. I'm training, and it would be incredible to go to some of these places and do these ultras if I could get to that level. And it was the first time I went, oh, so I don't have to be this really fast runner to be able to achieve those kind of distances. I guess yeah, it had just never occurred to me before. Um, but I also trying to get 10 kilometers in a day around work and childcare and things along those
Yeah.
lines. I thought, well, if I can start running this, I can get this done a lot quicker.
That's true.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So I started run walking, so that the Jeff Galloway method.
Yeah.
Uh, and I first started, um, there's a Facebook page with Girls That Jeff or something like that on Facebook that I saw that with these 15-second intervals, which I'd never tried before. So I went for 15 seconds run, 30 seconds walk, and I went out and did 10 kilometers, and I did a 10K PB, and it just blew my mind that that could be quicker than my running time.
Yeah.
Uh, and it just felt so much easier than when I've been out slogging trying to run in the past. So, so that I just started doing that, and um, I still hadn't signed up to the marathon at this point in time. I wasn't considering
Sure.
a road marathon, but there was a 21K trail run through Mount Beerwah, which is in Queensland, in Australia, in the Glasshouse Mountains. They call it these series of mountains, a very hilly uh, trail marathon with some quite challenging terrain. And I signed up to that for my first half, and I did it in December, just after I completed my first Module 1 hike,
Yeah.
and it was 36 degrees, which I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but it was hot. It
Yeah.
was, uh, yeah, summer in Australia, in Queensland, disgustingly hot.
Yeah.
I'm putting ice down in my tops at every aid station and just
Yeah.
trying
Just
to keep
anything to cool up.
anything.
Yeah.
But I did it, and when I completed it, I was just so, yeah, thrilled. It was such a high. So I wanted to keep going, and then from there I thought, well, like it did take forever. It was 4 hours to complete this 21K
Yeah.
hike, but again, the terrain was very challenging,
Yeah.
and I was run walking it. So I was looking at which ultra to look at towards the end of into the next year. And then my husband signed up to do the Sydney Marathon, and he does have a background in running. He's a good runner,
Yeah.
uh, but but not so good at training. And he didn't end up training really for it. He did a 16K run and went down to Sydney, and it was meant to be. It's in spring. It wasn't meant to be that hot, but it was this unseasonably hot day,
Mm.
and uh, yeah, he didn't have the best run. He made it, and again without the training, I guess I don't think he hadn't prepared himself, but
Didn't know
he
what he had bit off at that point.
no, and he still managed to complete it, and that's when I thought, well, if he can do that without training, surely with training, maybe I could do an actual
Yes.
marathon. And with
Yeah.
between the Jeff Galloway method and some consistent training, perhaps I can do this. Uh, However, um, the marathons here, as I was saying to you, I'm sure it's similar in America at the moment.
Yeah.
They're all selling out really quickly, and our local big one is on the Gold Coast, and it had sold out. So I put my name on the wait list. Both my husband wanted a redemption marathon where he trained for it,
Yeah.
and yeah, I signed us both up to the wait list. And then in January, I got an email to say that we've both been offered a spot. They'd been
Wow.
able to change the course to, I think they let another 10,000 participants enter.
Wow.
So then I realized I had to train for a marathon.
Then reality sets in.
The
You're like,
reality
okay.
sets in. But
Yep.
still, at this point, I'd just been hiking, and yes, so I had a few smaller um, trail runs booked in that are around kind of the 15-kilometer mark. So I was using those for my long runs, and so I started the actual marathon training from, I think it was around um, March. So the marathon was in June. Sorry, the 7th of July was the marathon. So I did start my training block probably the three months before.
Okay, yeah. And you had
Yeah.
already ran a half at that point, so you had that kind of base level
Yeah, so I was
of running at that point.
building it up, but I
Yeah.
hadn't been doing it on the road until that point. And it's very
True. Yeah.
different. Those first few long runs on the road, I wondered what
Yeah.
I'd signed myself up to.
For
It's
sure, yeah. I've always wondered about that because I kind of got into it the opposite way. I started on the road and then I kind of dipped my toes into trail running a little bit, and it's 100% different. So,
yeah,
what was the transition like in training, going from training on a trail to training on a road?
yeah, just two different types of hard, I guess. It was just I thought it would be more seamless, but it wasn't. It was
Yeah,
really challenging. But again, I just did that Jeff Galloway method. So for a long time, I was still just doing the 15 seconds run, 30 seconds walk. And on those long runs, I didn't put any time pressure on myself. I wasn't looking at my pace. I just wanted to complete it. And once I got a few of those, because each time, I'd start it with the 16-kilometer long run, and I couldn't fathom having to build that up to the 42 kilometers. And
yeah,
even the following week, going, I have to do this again, and I have to add. I was spent by the end of it to add another 2 kilometers to that run again the following week.
right.
Uh, but then you do it, and the high that you get when you go, oh, and
Yeah,
as it gets closer, you're going, well, maybe this is achievable. Maybe I can do this.
yeah,
And as my fitness increased, I changed my ratios with my run walk. So by the time I got to the start line of the marathon, I'd built up to a 60-second run and a 30-second walk.
gotcha.
And that felt more comfortable to me by the end.
Yeah. Wow, that's great. I love the way that you got to the marathon day, because I think that a lot of people can relate to like having to prove it to yourself along the way. A lot of
Yeah.
times it's not something that you can just wrap your head around right away.
Yeah.
So the fact that you got into hiking first and you had this group that you were in, and then you found it through like your husband ran a marathon, and then it started to seem achievable, and this podcast you listen to, and like every
Yeah.
little thing in your story is just like putting the little puzzle pieces together. It seems like to get to marathon day,
Yeah.
which I think is great because yeah, you really don't know if you can do it in the beginning. It's something that you have
No.
to prove to yourself along the way, and just trust the process. So I think that's really cool. Um, when did you feel like you like a long training when you were training for the marathon? When do you feel like you surprised yourself for the first time? For example, I feel like there's always a mileage people hit where you go,
Yeah.
"Wow, I just did that," you know?
Yeah. So for me, I guess, so when I first started doing those road runs,
Yeah.
I I guess I freaked myself out a little bit going, when it didn't feel obtainable to me. I ended up signing up to they have another race down the Gold Coast 7 weeks before the marathon called the Gold Coast 30, which I'm pretty sure is another company. They're not affiliated, but
Mm,
they uh, I saw that one and I thought, oh, 7 weeks before a 30K run, at least that'll be a long run that's in a group atmosphere that will get me through
true.
a run that long. So I signed up to that, and it came with a running program that got you to the 30K mark, to their race, but then continues on for another 7 weeks to get you to the marathon distance as well.
Mm,
So I thought, oh, that's perfect for me. And the longest run in that program was that 30K run that was in this group atmosphere. So I thought that one's okay. Mentally, I can do that because the race atmosphere. But then I think it was because you kind of take back the mileage after that 30K run and then build it up again. So there
yeah.
was a 28K run that I knew I had to do solo. And that to me was this really, really scary run that I knew was going to be super hard and to do all by myself after work in the dark, just yeah. In so
Everything that could be scary about that.
yeah, yeah. So in my head, it that was my scary one. And when I did that, when I finished it, that was probably the most emotional run for me of the whole program. That was when I went, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be able to get that run done.
Yeah.
Because the 30K on the race day that was super tough. It was hot. It was really, really challenging. So the 30K, which I thought would be easier in the race atmosphere, wasn't, and that left me doubting myself again. But when I did
Mm,
that 28 and it felt comfortable, it wasn't until I got that one done that I went, yeah, I've got this.
yeah.
I've got this
Yeah,
now.
there's
Yeah.
there's always that one run that proves it to yourself where you're
Yeah.
like, "Dang, I can do hard things. This is pretty cool."
Yeah. And that was my motto of the whole that I repeat to myself over and over again.
Yeah.
I can do hard things. I can do hard things. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was yeah, that was the run for me. And yeah, from there. It,
Everything is just so exciting for your first
mhm.
marathon. But every week you're hitting a new milestone. And being in a race environment, you said you ran that 30K, where maybe things didn't quite go as you expected it to go. What was it, weather related, or was there anything else that that you think impacted the day for you?
Yeah, it was a really good I guess training for the race in those race conditions in a few ways. Uh, there was a couple of things that kind of went wrong. So
Mm,
it was hotter than I thought. It was a little bit later in the day and quite warm, a lot of direct sunlight, and which I never cope very well with.
yeah, I'm
And
the same way. Direct
yeah,
sun. No. Yeah.
no. And it was particularly the first 5 or 6 kilometers. It was quite narrow, and it was a large race with a lot of people there. So I didn't feel I could do the run walk method. I would have got in people's way. So I ran for the first maybe 4 kilometers without doing that run walk, which I hadn't been training for. And I think mentally as well as physically, that threw me a bit.
Mm,
Uh, so there was that. And then the hydration on the course was I don't can't remember the brand, but it was like that complete nutrition, where they have the carbs as well as the hydrolytes and electrolytes in the drink,
Yeah.
which I had trialed on one of I have a that was the other thing I learnt through all of this was the nutrition side of things I found very challenging.
Yes.
Um, and I have a very sensitive stomach, and so I wasn't willing to try that. So I think just having water and a couple of gels, not having any electrolytes when it was so hot, really threw me. So, but it was a good learning lesson because I knew then on the marathon day I wanted to bring my own electrolytes with me. So I had that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah, it's a good point because yeah, you don't know a lot about nutrition in the beginning. And it's good to practice obviously on your training runs. You should practice
Mm.
nutrition, of course, but you never really know what it's going to be like until you put it in practice in a race. So, yeah, I'm a big
Yeah.
proponent of sprinkling in half marathons, sprinkling in other races before a marathon just so that you are prepared
Yeah.
for the actual
Yeah.
race conditions, you
Definitely.
know.
Yeah. Sorry, the birds are getting a bit
No, you're okay.
crazy. um, yeah, definitely. Because I guess, and I've listened to your podcast obviously, and you talk about running with your training vest, and I would carry all that on the long run, but I didn't want to carry it on race day,
Yeah,
and so it was a good learning lesson for me. Yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
Yeah. And how far out, when you ran this 30K, how far out were you from your marathon? Like, how far into training were you at that point?
So it was 7 weeks away at that point.
7 weeks away. Okay,
Yeah,
great. So had about 4 or 5 more weeks of training, and then would go into some sort of taper period from
yeah,
there. Is that okay?
yeah.
Cool.
That's right. Yeah,
Cool. How did it feel getting to like the later mileage? So you had already proved to yourself that hey, I can do hard things. I'm here for this. I'm gonna do it.
yeah.
But then once you got to the later miles and you were really starting to test a similar distance that you were going to be getting on race day, how were you feeling? How was your body feeling at that point?
Look, anything over 21K, so a half marathon, it
Yeah.
was it was a slog, to be honest. It was hard. I guess just the fatigue in my legs and um yeah, I always found that challenging. But I guess mentally, as I started to do that every week, I just knew I can get to the 21K mark, and then I knew it was going to be hard.
Yeah.
Uh, and so sometimes that made it a little bit easier, I guess, just knowing that this is going to be more challenging. And I guess as it built up to say the 28Ks, it's the 25 kilometers that um, would feel more easier. It was always that kind of last five that was
Yeah.
didn't matter how far you're going, it's the last five that were going to hurt and be a slog. But I came
I
to
know it's
expect
funny like
that.
that.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, no, I feel the same way. I have to start just putting longer runs on my calendar anyways, because I know that no matter what I put on the calendar, the last two are always going to feel a little bit worse.
yeah,
It's strange how running works like that.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Uh, yeah, and but everything really was going pretty well to plan.
Yeah.
But then, so 2 weeks before the marathon, on my, sorry, it would have been so my last long run ended up being 3 weeks before the marathon. I had a niggle in my left foot, and on that long run, it was it didn't get worse, but it then wasn't going away, and I started to get a bit concerned about it. My foot was hurting when I wasn't doing much.
Mm,
Um, so I went and saw a podiatrist, and I realized I had a tendon issue in my foot.
mm.
And so my taper started a lot earlier than expected, which threw me. Um, so from that 3 weeks out, he was just getting me to do 5Ks and just testing my foot each time. And
Mm.
I'd start running and it would start hurting. And I was really worried then about this tendon issue in my foot. So that started to panic me. I thought, I've done all this training. If I can't get this marathon
Right.
done, then yeah, to me, it's yeah, it would have been really upsetting not to be able to get it done.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I was really worried about that. And then the week before the marathon, my husband got some virus, which I'm pretty sure was COVID. And
Mm,
then I didn't even care about my foot anymore. I thought I can at least go and try. But my podiatrist said just get to the start line, run it. If you start limping, you need to pull out. You'll need to walk off.
mm.
It's not worth it. There'll be other runs. But you don't force an injury. So I knew that I can at least go and try. But if I got some virus, you
You'd
know,
be done.
I'm done.
Yeah.
So although um, my husband had signed up to the marathon, he again hadn't really trained. So he uh, he did do the 30K run with me and smashed it. He's very frustrated like that, and he was
I
very
feel the same way. Yeah, about my boyfriend. That it's I think it's a guy thing. They can just put on shoes and walk out the door and go.
they just do it.
Yeah.
And so he was really looking forward to the marathon. He was very disappointed he couldn't go. And he two of his friends were going. One was flying up from South Australia, and he was quite upset that he couldn't do the marathon. But yeah, so the week leading up to it, I was avoiding him, and we have a 5-year-old, so it was very hard to try and keep away. I was terrified I was going to get sick.
Yeah.
So, but at least I guess it stopped me worrying about my taper and my injury to my foot. I just thought if I just got to try not to get sick before the date.
Yeah.
And
Good
yeah,
distraction.
yeah, yeah. So to get to the start line, I was just nothing else mattered. I was just so excited, and yeah, it was great.
Y- Yeah. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I mean, a lot leading up to the marathon though that I'm sure was impacting you mentally. It's I guess with kind of silver lining, we could say that that you had a little bit of a distraction, but where was the foot and injury and dealing with all of that, like how were you feeling confidence wise through that period?
Yeah, it threw my confidence a lot because
Yeah.
I guess these kind of tendon issues are really, they're challenging. That it's, there was times where I couldn't feel anything at all. I'm like, oh, is this all in my head? It's not, it's fine. Let's go for a run. And then you start running,
Right.
like, oh, and immediately it'll start, or even 5Ks down the track, it would start just this niggle again. And to go, it was hard to, I guess, to know whether to run through that or to rest, and just not quite, I just wasn't sure how to manage it. And um, I'm glad that the podiatrist I saw is he's a running coach and specializes
Mm,
in running. And I'm
helpful.
glad I went and I found him and someone like that. So that made me more confident in um, what I was in the decisions around there. I just needed to be told what to do. So it
Yeah.
was,
Yeah. If he's telling you you're good, you're
yeah,
rolling with it.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, it was nice to have someone I could trust, I guess, to help me with those decisions. And yeah, but yeah, it
For
did throw
sure.
my confidence. And by that point, I was really falling in love with the running, and I was missing the long runs, which was just mind blowing to me because I thought I hated them. And
Yeah.
um, yeah, so yeah, that was yeah, it was weird to miss those.
Yeah, it's cool though when you look back and you're like, wow, 4 months ago, 5 months ago, however long it was, this is something that I couldn't even dream of doing, and here I am panicking
Yeah,
about not being able to run a marathon or not being able to run
yeah,
my long runs. It's
yeah,
cool. It's cool to see changes in yourself, and I think running is a really beautiful sport like that where you can progress so quickly and have those moments of like, wow, I really can do these things. I think it's really cool. Um,
yeah.
but we know you got to race day. We know you made it there. So were you traveling very far for this marathon, or how close were you? Like what were the logistics like leading up to the marathon?
So I live in Brisbane, and
Mhm.
the Gold Coast is just over an hour south of where I live. So
Oh,
it's
not too
not
bad.
far, no. But we had a hotel for the weekend down down there. So we traveled down on, so the run's on the Sunday, the marathon's the Sunday. So we traveled down on the Saturday and went to the expo to collect our race packs. We had to sell, um, well, we found someone to take my husband's ticket, so we arranged to meet him at the marathon. So he was doing
Oh,
the double.
nice.
Yeah, yeah. And he was doing the double. So that's the half marathon on the Saturday and then the full marathon on the Sunday.
Oh,
So
wow.
Yeah, yeah. So it was cool to meet him and give him the. He decided last minute to do this to sign up to the double as well. He was just doing the half, so
Just
uh,
casually signing up
just
for a full marathon.
casually
No
going,
big
yeah,
deal.
yep, the day after a half. So that was interesting to meet him and hear about that. And the expo was really cool to go and be in that atmosphere where I hadn't experienced anything like that before. And actually, in all my training, I did want to say that again, never being into team sports and running, I guess marathon running isn't a team sport, but I really felt this sense of community even on these long runs. I think so. The Gold Coast Marathon has 30,000 people for the race weekend. So between all their races, I'm not sure how many the actual marathon has. But I felt like when I was on those long runs on the Saturday morning, because everyone's there running along the river. We have this beautiful running track along Brisbane that just goes through the city along the river. It's stunning. It's beautiful along all these parklands, and it's just full of all these runners with their vests and their gels and their and so
Yeah.
I felt like I was part of something there. And I joined. There's a local running club I joined as well on a Tuesday afternoon, and they were targeted for the Gold Coast Marathon, their training session. So
Mm.
I went along with that, and so found these little group on Strava and was following them. And there was a group of about 7 people from my team at work that were all doing the marathon as well.
Cool.
And so I felt this really big community atmosphere. And I loved getting on, the Strava after the weekend to see what everyone's long runs and how they're all
Yeah.
progressing. I was getting really invested in everybody's marathon journey because
Yes. Yeah.
to me, I don't know. I've always been really excited by the marathon. I've always loved watching them on the Olympics or whenever it's televised and any show about marathon running. I've just really been into it, and I've just always found it so mind blowing that people can run that far and that long, and to actually be a part of that was really, really cool. And then for
Yeah.
that expo, everyone being there and it really built the excitement, and I was just yeah, cloud nine. I just thought it was so great.
Yeah. No, it's cool. The running community is maybe I'm a little biased, but I think the running community is one of the best communities out there. Everybody's just so supportive, and you're right. You feel 100% a part of the team.
Yeah.
And were most of your runs through training, besides when you were training with that group, were they solo for the most part, or did you
Yeah.
do mostly with a group?
No, so even with the group ones, they weren't ever, I didn't do any long runs with anybody. So
Mm.
it was more speed training sessions with them on a Tuesday afternoon. So most of my runs were slogging it out by myself.
Yeah, no,
But
I was the same way. Yeah, and that's that's why I asked, because I felt like the first time for my first marathon, when I walked into that the event center for the first time to get my packet, I was like, oh, look at all these people that are doing the same thing that I'm doing. It was
yeah,
just very eye opening, because you feel like, yeah, you're out there by yourself, and you see other runners, like
yeah,
you said, you see them in their vests and everything, but
yeah,
you're very much in your own world. So when you go show up to an expo and you're like, wow, we all just trained for this exact same
I
thing
know.
over the last however many weeks. It's very, yeah, community driven for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah. And yeah, I'm just walking around going, I'm so proud of us.
I know we did it.
Yeah, yeah. So I really enjoyed just that atmosphere of the expo, and yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah. Did you do any like
Mm.
scoping out of the route and at all the day before, the days leading up when you made it in, or we're leaving that for race day?
Uh, so a little bit. So the 30K that I did was nearby. So my husband knew the course,
Okay.
and we did a little drive of it when we went down for that. And so it's an out and back course, but the it comes. So you go out and at the 30K mark, which again, I'm not great with my kilometers versus
I think it's about 18 miles for us.
about 18 miles. Yeah,
Yep.
that's you run past the finish line at that point, and you've got to go out for the last 12 kilometers.
Mm,
Well, you go out for six and then come back for your final, what would that be? Your final 4 miles coming back to
yeah.
the finish line. And the Gold Coast course is extremely flat. There is not, not a hill there, except for at
Yeah.
that 30K mark. There's a slight incline. And in my head, I knew that that was going to be the really, really hard part for me, running past the finish line as a slower runner, watching people finish when I still had the really challenging part of the run to go.
Yeah.
So I c- we went past that part and looked where it was, and so I guess I started to prepare myself, going, well, that's going to be from this point on is going to be the really hard part of the run of the race.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, yeah.
At
So
least you could kind of like mentally prepare yourself, I guess, if you're prepared for, or if you see it ahead of time. Especially
yeah,
knowing that you pass the finish line, because gosh, is that a knock to your confidence when you see the finish line and realize how much time you have left to run? You're like,
yeah,
okay, let me collect
okay,
myself here for a second.
yeah, yeah. And after, because I'd just done that 30 kilometers, and I just couldn't imagine doing another 12 kilometers at that
Yeah,
point, and seeing that, yeah, I guess my confidence at that point was quite low, and I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I still had my 7 weeks of training to go, and was just hoping it all would fall into place. And yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, cool. So you made it in the day before, got packet pickup and everything. You were ready to go. What was the logistics the morning of? Like, how were you feeling when you got to the start line for the first time?
So uh, I was staying down at Broad Beach, which you need to catch the tram from Broad Beach up to the start line.
Hmm.
And actually, in the lift, in the elevator going down, I met this woman who it was her 10th marathon.
Oh, cool.
She had done, I think it was three New York City marathons,
Wow.
Chicago, um, and a number of different Australian ones, Sydney and Melbourne, and she'd done the Gold Coast a couple of times as well. So I got talking to her, and we stuck together, and we worked out she was a similar pace to me, and it was a really nice, I guess, distraction for the nerves to have someone like that to talk to, and
Yeah,
um, ask her all the cool stories about all the different marathons she'd done, and
for
yeah,
sure.
that was really good. And I guess when you're saying the logistics, so as I was saying before, the nutrition I always found very challenging and not great with all the gels, but and it was hard to know. I wanted to have enough. Ideally, I'd love to take a gel every half an hour, but I thought realistically, I'm looking at every 45 minutes to take
Mm,
one, and I didn't have my vest with me, and trying to pack everything in as well as my hydration because I wanted to carry that, but I didn't want the heat of the vest because even though it was winter, it still can get quite warm
hmm.
here. So uh, because my husband being unwell, um, he wasn't running it now. So I gave him a few. He was going to meet me out on the course, so I gave him a few of the gels to carry
Oh,
in case
nice.
I needed more. Yeah, so that was handy,
Yeah.
uh, and carried the rest with me. Um, and yeah, I just had a couple of the smaller water bottles that in my pocket. If you look back at my photos, and then I look like this pack horse with all these big bulging pockets. Um, but yeah, and yeah, we made it to the start line, and I found my husband's two friends that were doing it. They were in the same starting group as us. So that was cool to see them and wish them well before we
Yeah.
left. And I was so emotional being at the start line again, it was the whole, I'm so proud of us all to be
Yeah.
there, and, and um, yeah, it was awesome. They had this race presenter. I don't know what it is, but he did this big pump up speech at the beginning, and he's like, the marathon starts at 30 kilometers. The first 30 kilometers is your warm up. It starts when it gets hard, and hard is good. And he did this big pump up speech, and
I love that.
it was so good. And to me, because I guess it drilled in that 30K mark that that was my longest run, and that's where it was. And um, as I said, the turnaround, the running past the start line, and I knew that to me, that's when the marathon was going to start. And
Hmm.
to have, yeah, I really got a lot out of his little pump up speech, and
Yeah.
yeah, it was good. And your I guess advice of listening to going, well, it's going to be my PB. I wasn't too caught up on time. I thought if I could beat my husband's marathon time, I would be pretty
Yeah.
be pretty thrilled with myself. But it was never. I just wanted to finish it and enjoy it, and that whole, I guess, celebration of your training. That's what I was there for.
So
I
important.
didn't care at that point. I just wanted to enjoy it and have fun and soak up the atmosphere, and I did. I loved it. So yeah, yeah, and just being there at that start line, yeah, I was top of the world. It's really good.
Yeah. Ready
Yeah,
to go. Did it
ready to
take
go.
forever? I feel like sometimes those start lines you feel like you're standing there forever and you're like the excitement just keeps building and building and
All
building because you're
building,
there
like,
for
come
so
on,
long.
let's go. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. Was a bit like that, but yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and
Well,
yeah,
cool. And then the race started. So let's break down like the first half. How was the first half
yeah.
of the race like for you?
So I mentally broke it down into those three sections. So I always, as I said before, the first 21 Ks I knew was fine,
Hmm.
and after that it would be a slog. So in my head I was breaking it down to 21 Ks to get to that, and then 21 to 30, and then the marathon starting at the 30K mark.
Yeah.
So that first 21K, yeah, it felt pretty good actually. It had been the day before, it had been raining, and we were expecting worse weather, but
Mm.
the sun had come out. It wasn't too hot at that point. It was pretty good. Um, I had I just listened to an audio book. And would turn it on and off as the crowds along the Gold Coast are actually amazing.
I was gonna ask that. Yeah. I would
Yeah,
think they would be amazing with all those runners. Yeah.
yeah. And I guess because there's so many, it's all this big, I guess, tourist city that anyway, pretty much the whole route was just there wasn't many places where there weren't spectators. The
That's great.
signs, it was a really, really good atmosphere. Highly recommend if anyone wants an
Yeah.
Australian run. It was incredible.
You know
Uh,
when you're pausing the music or pausing the audiobook that it's a good race.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, particularly when it built up, and they'd have the music and bands and stuff in sections as well. So I'd pause for that, and it was around the Surfers Paradise sign, the real touristy part where the front runners were coming past. So I paused to watch that because it's just, I love that you can be in the same race as these people that were about to go to the Olympics. And
Oh yeah, pretty cool.
yeah, it was wild. And just to see them, yeah, to go past I wanted to enjoy that, and I did. Yeah, it was very cool. Uh, so yeah, the first half I was just tuning in and out of that. One of my husband's friends, because I kept doing my run walk method, I was
Yeah.
sticking to my plan. I wasn't going off that, and so we kept passing each other as we were going. So that was
Yeah.
nice. And my new friend that I met from the tram on the way down from our hotel room. Same thing, I kept passing her, and there was this, yeah, just seeing people in their costumes, and there was this group of Japanese tourist runners, I guess, that were near me they had all the little outfits on and little
Oh, cute.
like bow ear things, and they were so much fun and really enjoying it. So I was just enjoying, yeah, the atmosphere and the other runners, and yeah, it was really good.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
felt pretty comfortable for that
Yeah,
pace. We know that that was charted territory for you, but
yeah,
that's great that everything in the beginning
yeah,
started out really
yeah.
well. So
My
how do we progress from there?
well, my tendon in my foot did start hurting around the eight
Hmm.
kilometer mark actually, and I
Okay.
started to go. That was when I first went, oh no, like I don't. I was feeling good until that point. So
Yeah.
I had, again, with all my pack horse pockets, I had some Voltaren gel in my pocket, so I stopped and I rubbed that on, and but after another 10 Ks or so, everything hurt, so it
It just blended in.
just blended in. It was fine. Um, so yeah, it felt okay. And then the next lot, that 21 to to 30 kilometers, that was tougher. It was starting to get hard, particularly towards the end. So I had before I went on the marathon, and I don't know, I probably saw this idea somewhere. I have no idea, but I reached out to close friends and family and asked everybody for a song for me for the marathon to do a
I love
playlist.
that. Yeah.
And I didn't, I listened to it for the last 5Ks of that 28K solo run that I did. But other than that, I hadn't touched it. I hadn't listened to it. So when I got to I was trying to wait till 30Ks, but I couldn't wait anymore at 29 kilometers. I'm like, no, I need this. So
Yeah.
I put this on, and so my sister had just had a baby, or her baby's was 8 months old or
Mm.
so, or actually around a year. Terrible auntie, but but she gave me a song for her daughter, which was like
Oh.
NSYNC Bye Bye Bye, because that's all she says is Bye Bye Bye, and that was
Oh,
the
that's
first.
cute.
Yeah, it was cute. So that was the first song that came on, and I was like, oh, and so yeah, actually that playlist, I highly recommend anyone doing that because the songs would come on, and I'll go, oh, which person gave me that, and gave me just something to distract me and
I
think
love that.
about, and it was like a little cheer from each person. So that was, yeah, I really like that. That really helped me in that last slog
Yeah.
of the run. But yeah, I put that on, and then I was at the 30K mark, and the part that I thought would be hard was actually uh, I really loved going past the finish line and seeing people running in. Saw some guy grab a beer out of the crowd and neck that, and everyone's cheering. It was a good kilometer or so of, like, as I said, there was crowd support everywhere, but this was a party. There was people everywhere,
Yeah.
and to run past that and go, okay, I'm going to be there soon, and it was a distraction just watching it, and yeah, I yeah, it was just interesting because I thought that was going to be the hard part, and
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
really enjoyed it.
Give you a little boost, maybe.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
did. And then from there, my body was getting quite tired. It was hard, but looking around, everyone was hurting by this point,
Yeah.
and
A little bit of solidarity when you look around, you're like, oh,
yeah,
okay, we're all going
okay,
through the same thing. Got
yeah,
it.
yeah. If you're enjoying it at this point, there's,
Yeah.
you're not pushing.
Yeah, right,
So,
right.
um, yeah, and so I just, yeah, my body was tired, and I just kept pushing on, and I was still, when I say if you're enjoying it, I was still enjoying it. Yeah, there was still all the crowd support. I knew I was getting closer. I knew I was going to finish it, so that was exciting.
Yeah.
And yeah, my husband he was back up. He met me down. His parents came down for the weekend as well to initially cheer us both on, but now cheering me on. And
Yeah.
so he'd made his way back up towards the finish line. So I got to see him again before I finished it. And yeah, and then when I come back past that, I got to that last kilometer, 2 kilometers of all the crowd support. It was just, yeah, it was incredible. It was a great finish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you get to experience like the finish line feeling? Like what did that feel like when you crossed the finish line?
Well, what I didn't have in my head, I've come around the corner and they have the big, what I thought was the big finish line post, I guess, of
Yeah.
arch that you go through. And I'm like, I'm here, I've done it. And then I've gone through, and no, there's like another 200 meters of a blue carpet after that.
Stop. Oh my gosh. That's mean.
Which was probably obvious to everyone else except for me, but I thought I'd finished it, and then when I wasn't, I was like, oh no. But then,
Dang it.
yeah, you're on the blue carpet, and the crowd's even bigger, and it was, yeah, no, it was just, I was, I look back at, I get, all the race photos that come through, and I'm
Yeah.
just grinning the whole way. I'm just, yeah, I did. It was a party. I really enjoyed it. And so yeah, to get through and finally get over that 200 meters later, the actual finish line was just, yeah, it was amazing. It's so good.
Yeah. That's great. And that would have tricked me too. I don't think that was you. Yeah, normally the arch is at the end, so that would have got me too.
Right.
Yeah, that's so strange.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, there was an arch at the end as well, but
They faked
they
you
tricked
out.
me with their fake arch.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds incredible. So you got to feel it. You got to feel the energy at the end. I think being your first marathon or your first marathon being a pretty big race, I'm sure that was just unreal to have that level of crowd support the whole time,
Yeah.
just like pushing you through and keeping you going. So,
Yeah.
so
So
that's
good.
great. Sounds like an amazing first marathon story or first marathon experience. So, just looking back on the whole thing, if you could like pick a thing or two that you felt like you learned about yourself along the way, what would that thing be?
Uh, that's a good question. I guess, well, that whole I can do hard things, it I did not think that I could enjoy those long runs. Those first months worth, it felt like that I did. I was not enjoying them at all, that slog. But to actually to to be out there, to have that kind of time and space, to have those, to be alone with your thoughts, I guess, for a little while each week, for a little while, 3 hours or so
Yeah, a
on
little bit of time.
a little bit of time, I actually found really great. And yeah, I guess the pride of something that I thought was so unachievable and to be able to train for it, to do it was, I'm really glad that I did it. Yeah, I got a lot from the whole experience but I guess that's the hardest thing to, I guess, to test my limits and to go, oh, I can do these really challenging things, and yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. And then if you
Mhm.
could think about yourself, 9, 10 months ago when you first started this journey,
Yeah.
and if you could give some advice to that person that's just getting started, like what advice would you give?
That uh that just because you are a slower pace, and not used to these distances, that it doesn't mean that it's not achievable. That if that's something that you want to do, um, whether it's a marathon, a half marathon, an ultra marathon, if you are a slower pace person that is only doing, 5 kilometers is your long run, it is obtainable. Yeah, with the right program and consistent training is the biggest thing. That consistency, that these big distances are achievable.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
love that. And you'll prove it to yourself. You will. We
yeah,
promise.
yeah. That's for sure. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, cool. Well,
Mhm.
I guess the question I have for you now, you ran your first marathon, obviously. Where are
Yeah.
we going from here? Are we
Yeah.
completely hooked on this whole thing and we're going to keep this
Yeah.
going, or what are you thinking from here?
Completely hooked.
Yeah.
So, I'm now, so I've, as well as the marathon training, I continued my hiking throughout that as well. I was
Mhm.
uh, taking out, so they have breaks in between each module. So during the height of the marathon training, there was about 4 or 5 weeks break, so that was good. I could focus on the running. But anyway, I continued my hiking, so I ended up finishing last month the final challenge of that, which was a 6-day hike through Gari, known as Fraser Island, off the coast of Queensland, where we carry our packs and tents
Oh,
and
cool.
and food, and unsupported go and hike the Great Walk there. So I completed that, and I've now been asked to be a track leader for the program. So I start
Oh,
that next month.
congrats.
Yeah, thank
That's
you.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, so it'll be nice to hopefully help some other people achieve their goals as well. So I'm going to be doing that, and I'm going to still continue with a few trail runs. So locally we have a trail running season called, or trail running group, I guess. I don't know what you call it, but it's called the Southeast Queensland Trail Series. That's what it's called.
Mm, mm.
And so I've signed up to 4 or 5 of those over the next 5 months or so. There's a few between now and Christmas, and a few afterwards. So they're all around kind of the 15-kilometer mark. So
Mm.
I'm going to do those. I've got a half marathon booked in November again down the Gold Coast. So I'd like to try, and I'm training. That's my main one I'm training for at the moment. Hopefully, I would like to get a PB on that. But it
Yeah.
will be a lot warmer that time of year. It'll be summer, so we'll see how we go. And I'm looking at an ultra next year. So I'm not sure which one yet, but
Busy,
Um,
busy. Got lots coming up.
yeah, yeah. So that's
Are
what's on
you
the
one of
cards
those
for me.
people now that you're on the other side of the marathon, do you feel like you're one of those people that likes to have stuff on the calendar so you constantly have something that you're like working towards basically?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
When it all first, it was weird having the marathon and then that hiking program that I felt I've been doing over a year's worth of training. They're both wrapped up around the same time, and then I'm
Yeah.
like, now what? So I went and booked like six over the next 6 months, and I think it'll be good for me to do it that way. I need to have something there to focus on and look forward to and push towards. Yeah, yeah,
Cool. Well, that's exciting. You got a lot of exciting stuff coming up. I'm excited to hear what ultra you end up doing too, because that'll be a new world that you're dipping your toes into a little bit more. So
yeah,
it's very
yeah.
exciting. Are there any
Thank
that you're
you.
scoping out right now, or still thinking about it?
Yeah, so I was until last night actually. There's a Yandina 5.0 it's called. So it's up again on the Sunshine Coast. So I
Mm,
did that's the second half I did. I did in March this year. I did the half marathon there,
yeah.
which was they'd had a lot of rain. The first 5 kilometers was this thick, muddy. It was next level um, challenging, but
Yeah.
it was just due to the rain that we'd had around that time. So who knows? But there's another one around the same time. So the two I'm looking at are in March. So there's another one at Noosa in March that doesn't quite have the elevation. And I only saw that one last night. The elevation. I'm like, oh, maybe for my first one, maybe I could take a little bit less elevation and look at the
Sure.
Noosa one, and then perhaps um, look at adding more elevation down the track for a different one. Yeah.
Yeah, work your way up.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Cool. Well, very exciting. I'm excited, like I said, to see what you decide and see how training looks and all that. And if anybody wants to follow along with you, where can they find you?
So I have a running Instagram page. It's called Belle, Belle dot runs, runs. Yeah, you can find me there.
Cool. I'll make sure to link it too so people can follow along. But I really appreciate you sharing your story. Like I said in the beginning, I think that I love having people like you on the show because I think it shows that running a marathon can be doable for anybody, regardless of where your starting point is. It's something that if you put all the pieces together over time, that you can do. So I really appreciate you walking us through your training and shared your story today.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning into another episode. If you're enjoying My First Marathon, it would mean the world to me if you could rate and review the show. And if you or someone you know has ran a marathon and would like to share your story, I have a guest form to fill out in my bio on Instagram. That username is @MyFirstMarathonPod. See you on the next one.